My name is Lily, and my story begins on a morning when everything seemed perfect. I had just received praise for my successful presentation and felt like I was living in a dream. A dream job, a cozy home, and a husband I trusted completely. But everything crumbled in an instant. When I returned home and found a strange message on his phone, I couldn't believe my eyes. From that moment, I knew that what I thought was perfect love was nothing but lies. And have you ever wondered if the love you trust is truly real? Leave your thoughts below this video, like and subscribe to follow the next part of my story, where I will share how I faced this betrayal and decided to change my life. Alex and I had been married for 5 years, a long enough time for us to be close and understand each other. From the outside, our life in New York seemed perfect. We had a cozy home, I was a project manager at a big company, and Alex was a well-known interior designer. From work to family, everything was stable. Romantic dinners, relaxing weekends, and dreams of a bright future. Our friends always praised us as the perfect couple. Everyone thought I had a fulfilling marriage, but only I knew deep inside that I was feeling a growing emptiness. Alex wasn't someone who changed suddenly. He was still the thoughtful, refined man, always taking care of me as before. However, there was something I couldn't put my finger on. An ambiguous feeling that prevented me from feeling at peace in my own life. He no longer engaged in deep conversations, no longer asked me about work or the worries of the day. When we sat together on the warm sofa, I could feel the distance in his eyes. Those moments, which should have been times to connect, had now become empty silences. We still had dinner together, but there were no longer the conversations we once had. The stories we used to eagerly share now were just casual questions. I could clearly see the exhaustion in his eyes whenever I started a lengthy conversation about work, old friends, or future plans. Instead of concern, he only listened without engaging, as if what I said no longer mattered to him. It was hard for me to accept. On sleepless nights, I lay next to him, but my mind wandered. It felt like I was lying next to a stranger, not the husband I had loved for all these years. Perhaps I had deceived myself for too long. The perfect picture of marriage I had painted in my mind was now slowly shattering. Once, after I came home from a late meeting, I found Alex sitting at the dining table, staring at his laptop as usual. I greeted him, but he didn't immediately respond. "I'm looking at a new project. Have you eaten dinner yet?" That casual question no longer gave me the warm feeling I once felt. I silently walked into the kitchen and made dinner for myself. He didn't ask about my workday, about the difficulties I faced. And I couldn't bring myself to ask him about his work, as if there were an invisible wall between us. One morning, while I was preparing for an important meeting, Alex walked into the kitchen with a cup of coffee in hand. I was stirring my coffee, trying not to let the tension from the upcoming presentation overwhelm me. He looked at me, smiled gently, and asked, "Are you okay? I'm sure you're nervous about today's presentation." I looked into his eyes, and although he was smiling, I could sense the distance in his smile. He only said what I wanted to hear, but that feeling of silence was still there. Even when he hugged me and said I would do well, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was saying it out of obligation. It wasn't a big change, but the small details, the silences in our conversations, the promises that were never fulfilled. I had thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it was because work was too stressful or because I was too tired. But those feelings kept coming, and I began to question if I was truly living in a real marriage or just sharing a house with a roommate. One day, when I returned home after a meeting, I realized that Alex wasn't home. There was no notice. I waited for a call, an explanation, but nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I got up and walked to his office, a place I hadn't dared to enter in years. The room was filled with the traces of loneliness, of a man living a life that I was no longer part of. The vague feeling I had ignored for so long became suddenly clear. Perhaps I was no longer important in his life. That feeling grew stronger inside me, like a shadow that surrounded me, undeniable, and I began to wonder, do I truly know who he is? Or is he a figure I've imagined for all these years? That day, I decided not to say anything. I didn't want to create more doubts or emotional storms before I found out the truth. My heart was in turmoil, but I knew I needed to check everything to be sure. After all, I couldn't sit idly by and live with doubts forever. When I came back home, I didn't expect to face the painful truth immediately. Alex wasn't home. The room was empty as usual, but one strange detail made me stop right at the door. His wallet and phone were still on the table, right where he usually left them when going out. Alex was always careful with these items, never forgetting to take them, even if it was just for a short time. A strange feeling washed over me as I stepped inside. I didn't know why, but I felt like I had entered a room that didn't belong to me. His things were still there, but it felt like his presence was missing. I couldn't explain the feeling, but I knew something was wrong. I sat down, my hands trembling as I picked up his phone. A part of me wanted to stop right here, but another part of me, the part I couldn't suppress, urged me to keep searching. Perhaps I was too curious, too tired of the unanswered questions. I scrolled through the screen, trying to find a reason to stop, but I couldn't. First there were the calls. Nothing special, regular work calls. But then I scrolled down and found messages. Messages I never could have imagined between Alex and a woman I had never heard of. Samantha! That name appeared on the screen, and I felt my throat tighten. My body froze as I read each message. Wait for me tonight, my love. We'll have another wonderful night. I miss you so much, Samantha. Every minute with you is a wonderful minute. I want you to know how much you mean to me. I can't wait to see you again. You're all I need. The world around me seemed to collapse in that moment. Those sweet words, the ones Alex had once reserved for me, were now being given to this woman. A storm surged within me, tearing apart the love I had built for so long. They had had passionate conversations, shared moments that I had always thought were ours, just mine and his. My chest tightened. A strange pain surged, not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I couldn't believe that the man I had loved all these years could betray me so easily. They were sharing moments I had believed to be private, things I had trusted were ours, mine and his. I scrolled through more messages, each line cutting deeper into my heart. Their conversations didn't just stop at sweet words, but promises and distant plans I had never known about. They had been dating, meeting up not once but many times, and I, who had thought we were still a happy couple, had no idea of this woman's existence. That strange feeling grew clearer, a feeling I never wanted to experience but couldn't escape. I could ignore it, blame myself for not noticing something was wrong, but I couldn't pretend anymore. This was real, and the truth was throwing me into a void. I placed the phone on the table, but my hands kept trembling. It felt like I had just lost a part of myself. The world I had built in my head suddenly collapsed into pieces that could never be put together again. I didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to face him. I felt like a stranger in my own home. In that moment, I sat silently staring at the phone, as if hoping some miracle could change everything. But no, that was the truth, and I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. I stood up, walked into the living room where everything was still calm, but it wasn't the same as before. Everything now felt unreal. All of it was just the deception I had been living in. When I heard the door open, my heart was ready for a tense confrontation. I had thought a lot, imagined countless scenarios, the questions I would ask and what I would say. I wanted to tell him I knew everything, wanted him to face what he had done. But when he walked in, all I could do was stand still, my heart racing, my hands shaking. Alex didn't look at me. He walked past me and into the living room. His gaze was like there was an invisible distance I couldn't reach. He didn't greet me or ask if I was okay. He simply took off his shoes and tossed his briefcase on the table. The way he did everything as if we were still living in a normal marriage made it hurt even more. I stood there, frozen, my eyes glued to his back. At that moment, every question, every word I had planned to say, got stuck in my throat, like a steel nail I couldn't pull out. I couldn't believe that this man, the one I had given my heart and life to, could treat me like this. He had betrayed me, and now he was pretending like nothing had happened. I couldn't stay silent forever. I took a deep breath and walked toward him. Alex, I need to talk to you. He turned around looking at me strangely but didn't say anything. He remained silent as if he didn't understand what I wanted. The feeling of loneliness inside me suddenly overwhelmed everything. This silence, this avoidance, made me feel like a stranger in my own home. It wasn't the silence of someone thinking or worrying, it was the silence of someone who didn't want to face the truth. I tried to hold myself back, but the lump in my throat kept rising. Are you going to stay silent forever? Don't you have anything to say? Alex glanced at me, his eyes filled only with exhaustion. Lily, I'm tired, leave me alone. Those words felt like a punch to my chest. He didn't even realize what I was going through. He didn't realize that I was standing right here in front of him, struggling with the truth I couldn't deny. You can't do this, Alex. You can't keep avoiding this. What did you do? What did you do to us? I asked, unable to hold back my tears anymore. He remained silent, his hands hanging loosely by his side, his eyes meeting mine only briefly before looking away. The feeling of hopelessness, loneliness, and humiliation made me feel like I couldn't stand anymore. I sat down in a nearby chair, my head falling into my hands, my shoulders shaking from the unbearable pain. He was no longer the man I loved, the one I believed would always stand by my side through everything. Now he was a stranger, someone I no longer understood or knew how to define. You've made me lose faith in everything, Alex, I whispered, not knowing if he could hear me. You told me I was everything to you, but in the end, I'm just a stranger in my own life. You're not the man I loved anymore. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. The tension inside me felt like a rope stretched tight, ready to snap. I walked out onto the balcony, letting the outside air calm the turmoil inside me. I looked out, seeing the surrounding skyscrapers, and suddenly I felt so small, so lost in this world. The world kept moving around me, but I stood frozen, caught in a pain I couldn't put into words. Alex walked out behind me, but he didn't say anything, remaining silent a few steps away. I turned away, not wanting him to see my weakness or realize that I still needed him. But a part of me wanted him to come to me, to hold me, and say that everything would be okay, that we could start over. But he didn't do that. He remained distant, silent, with nothing to say. That was the moment I knew. I couldn't live in this lie anymore. My marriage had died when I didn't even realize it. And I couldn't continue dragging a relationship where I was the only one trying to keep it alive. I turned around, looked straight into his eyes, and in a moment of deep pain, I knew I had to leave. You're no longer the man I knew, Alex, and I can't live in the shadow of a man who betrayed me. I can't stay with someone who's broken my heart. He didn't say anything, and I knew it was me who had to move on. Deciding to leave Alex wasn't easy. The days I spent with him, though full of pain, I couldn't deny that I had once been very happy. The promises of love, the plans for the future, all made me believe that we would overcome any challenges together. But now, looking back, all I see is deceit, sweet words that hid unforgivable darkness. The day I decided to leave, I didn't say a word to Alex. I quietly packed my things, those items that no longer held meaning, no longer had value in this relationship. Our house was no longer a home. It was just an empty house, without love, without sharing. Every step I took carried pain, but I knew, if I didn't walk away right now, I would forever be someone living in the past, in regret and hurt. I found a small apartment near downtown New York, where I could start fresh. A place with no trace of Alex, no old memories, where I could find myself again. The first days in the new apartment were truly difficult. I didn't know where to start, didn't know what to do to find peace in my soul again. Everything around me felt unfamiliar, but it was that very thing that made me feel free, a freedom I had never had before. I spent a lot of time reflecting, looking back on what had happened. I didn't blame Alex, nor did I fault him. He made his choices, and I made mine. I refused to let that betrayal destroy me. Instead, I chose to stand up, step outside my comfort zone, and start over. After months of torment, I decided to enroll in a leadership skills course. I needed to learn how to stand strong, how to create value for myself, not rely on anyone, not even Alex. Taking this course not only helped me improve my skills, but also became an opportunity to meet new people, people who thought like me, people who had overcome life's challenges and found new light. The first classes were truly difficult. I felt like I was starting from zero. But the more I learned, the more I realized I wasn't the only one who had gone through pain and betrayal. I saw myself in the stories of other students, and I felt the strength from sharing, from people who were willing to face difficulties and rebuild their lives. One afternoon after class, I received an interview invitation from a large PR company I had always dreamed of working for. The excitement and surprise came to me like a reward for the efforts I had put in. It was the opportunity I had been looking for all this time. I couldn't let it slip away. I prepared thoroughly, from my outfit to the answers I thought would impress the recruiter. I didn't just want a job. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, that I could succeed without Alex by my side. On the interview day, I arrived early. The room was filled with light and the colleagues looked very professional. I felt small, but I didn't allow myself to back down. I sat waiting and looked at my reflection in the mirror, telling myself that I didn't come here to fail. I hadn't given up during the toughest times, and I wouldn't do that now. The interview went smoother than I expected. I answered confidently, sharing what I had learned in the leadership course, what I had done to change and move on in life. The recruiter seemed impressed by what I said. They didn't review my resume alone, they saw me, recognizing the strength and persistence I had demonstrated all along. After an hour, I left the interview feeling relieved and proud. Even though I didn't have the results yet, I knew I had done my best. A week later, I received news from the company. I had been chosen. I knew this was the beginning. Success in my career helped me regain faith in myself, but it wasn't that. During this time, I also learned that I could be stronger than I ever thought. I was no longer someone who depended on anyone else to feel happy. I had learned to love myself, to appreciate what I had, and to move forward. Life began to open new doors. I was no longer the betrayed wife, no longer the one living in pain. I was a confident woman with clear goals, and most importantly, I was rebuilding my life the way I wanted to. 1 year after I started my new life, when I could finally look at everything more calmly, life unexpectedly turned upside down again. At first, I only received a hurried call from my mom. Her voice was filled with worry, but also strangely, as if she were trying to hide the real fear in her heart. My father was seriously ill, and things had become critical. Even though I hadn't been in contact much with my family for a long time, I knew I couldn't ignore it. Immediately, I arranged my work and went back home, returning to the memories of a past that now seemed so distant, memories that I now felt were far out of reach. The feeling of coming home was no longer the warm feeling of the old days, but rather an unclear anxiety about things that were still uncertain. When I arrived, the hospital was not a pleasant place, but at least it made me feel close to my mom and dad. When I entered my father's hospital room, I couldn't help but be shocked by the drastic change in him. His hair was completely white, his skin was dry and wrinkled, and his body was frail. But what surprised me even more was Alex's presence. He was sitting there next to my mother as if we had never been apart, as if our relationship had never been broken. His presence confused me. I couldn't understand why he was here. All I knew was that he had left me, betrayed me with Samantha, and now, here he was, sitting next to my family like a close friend, like someone who hadn't done anything wrong. But I couldn't blame him at that moment. My father needed me, and my mother also needed my support, but how could I face him without my heart being shaken? Alex saw me from afar, and his eyes seemed to want to say something, but I couldn't read them. He stood up, walked over to me, but I took a step back. A part of me wanted to avoid him, while another part wanted him to speak the truth, to explain why he had done this to me, why he had betrayed me so brutally. But all he did was stand there, looking at me with eyes full of regret. Eyes that I had once loved, but now only made me feel helpless. "Lily," he started, his voice trembling slightly. "I know I was wrong. I don't deserve you. I betrayed you and I regret it. But can you hear me out one more time?" I didn't answer immediately. Although I had decided to let go, although I had found peace in my new life, seeing him again, I still couldn't control the mixed emotions inside me. "You don't need to explain anymore," I said, my voice firmer than I thought. "You made your choice. And I've made mine." Alex didn't say anything more. He silently looked at me before turning his gaze back to my father, who was lying on the hospital bed. That scene made me feel like everything was suddenly pushed back into the past. Our relationship was no longer a love story but a chaotic mess of pain, regret, and betrayal. But I couldn't blame my father or my mother. They needed me and I had to be there. I returned to my father's room and Alex followed me. He remained at the door, silent. Yet I could feel the pain in his eyes. Even so, I couldn't let myself be pulled back into the old memories. I had already spent too much time and energy rebuilding my life, and I couldn't let him ruin everything. When my father woke up, I took care of him like a devoted daughter. Although I still felt like I was missing something, I tried not to let the sadness take over. I quietly thought that if there was one thing I could do for my father at this moment, it was to make him feel the warmth of family, even though it might no longer be as complete as before. The next day, while I was standing in the hospital hallway, Alex found me again. He came closer, but this time, I couldn't keep the coldness in my heart. He whispered, his voice choking. "Lily, I know I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I was wrong. I didn't do the right thing. I want you to know that I still love you and I regret everything I've done." I looked into his eyes, feeling the pain rise in my chest, but I didn't say anything. I didn't need forgiveness, and I didn't need him to come back. I had found strength within myself, and I couldn't let myself go back to what had hurt me. But then right after that, the appearance of Samantha made me feel the complexity of our relationship growing deeper. She was standing at the end of the hallway, wearing a red dress, her face full of smugness and self-confidence that I had never seen before. When I saw her, I didn't need to ask anything. She was the one who had intervened in my life, shattering everything I once believed in. Samantha remained silent, looking at me indifferently, as if unaware of the destruction she had caused in my life. She didn't look at Alex but directed her gaze at me, as if she wanted to confirm that everything belonged to her now. In that moment, I felt the pain more clearly than ever, but I didn't allow myself to break down. Not this time, not in this situation. I couldn't wait any longer. Everything inside me was boiling. The questions kept swirling, forcing me to find out the truth. I decided to face Samantha, the one I once thought was just a stranger in my story. I had convinced myself that she was an intruder, a mistake that Alex couldn't avoid, but now I knew I needed to confront her. Not to resolve my anger, but to understand what had really happened. She agreed to meet me at a small cafe in the east side of New York. It was a quiet cafe where people could find a bit of peace in the city's hectic life. I arrived early, chose a table by the window, where I could see people passing by but not where I could hide from myself. I wanted to see her walk in, wanted to see the eyes of the woman who had shattered my life. When Samantha walked in, she hadn't changed much from what I had seen in the messages and pictures. She was still confident, wearing a simple yet alluring black dress, her eyes full of self-satisfaction and an attitude I couldn't mistake. She walked towards me, gently pulled out a chair, and sat down without saying a word. The suffocating silence between us made it hard for me to breathe. I took a deep breath and began, not allowing her to avoid it again. "Samantha," I began, my voice firmer than I thought. "We don't need to beat around the bush anymore. I know everything now. He loves you." "Doesn't he? Not me, but you. You're not the other woman. You're the one he truly loves." She looked at me for a moment, her eyes never avoiding mine. Instead, she merely stared at me, as if trying to anticipate what I would say next. "He loves me," she said, her voice neither fast nor slow but a quiet acknowledgement, as if she had been waiting for me to say it. "But I love him too. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know you're his wife, but what we have, it's a feeling I couldn't control." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. The love I had given him, the sacrifices I had made, turned out to mean nothing when compared to her. Everything I had once believed, all the values I held in my heart, now seemed like a joke. I stared at her, my vision blurring from the tears I hadn't allowed to fall. She couldn't understand the pain I was going through. "So you knew exactly how I would feel, but you still did this?" I asked, my voice choking. "You think I would understand and forgive you? After everything that's happened?" Samantha didn't answer right away. She was silent, her lips tightly pressed together. After a moment, she softly spoke. I don't know what to do. I love Alex, but I don't want to break up your family. I feel guilty, but I can't stop loving him. I tried, but I can't. Her words felt like a knife cutting into my heart. She admitted she loved him, admitted everything I had feared. I felt like I had been discarded, like a toy that had lost its value in Alex's life. The sweet conversations, the promises of love, turned out to be true. I had wondered why he could betray me, why he could go this far. But now everything was clear. Samantha wasn't the other woman, she was the one he truly loved, and I was just a part of his past that he no longer wanted to keep. So what am I to you, just a passerby? Someone who has to endure what you and he have created? I asked, my voice full of pain. Samantha was silent for a long time, then finally she sighed, as if trying to find an explanation. You're not a passerby. You're his wife. But emotions can't be forced. He and we couldn't control what happened. Her answer only made me feel like I was sinking deeper into a quagmire. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had trusted about Alex and about us, was now nothing but lies. She admitted the truth, admitted her feelings for him, but she couldn't change anything. And me? I was left with an indescribable pain. At that moment, I didn't know what I was searching for. I wanted to know if there was still something left for me in him, if there was any love still remaining. But when I looked at Samantha, I knew I had found the answer. His love wasn't for me, and I would have to learn to live with that truth. Finally, I stood up, not saying another word, not because I had nothing left to say, but because I realized I didn't need to fight anymore. Both of us had done things that couldn't be undone, and now it was time for me to leave my past behind, even though it would follow me for the rest of my life. As I walked out of that cafe, where I had faced the truth, a strange feeling washed over me. I didn't feel relieved or triumphant, a kind of emptiness I couldn't describe. Everything I had believed in, everything I had hoped for, now seemed to be nothing but shards. That entire night, I couldn't sleep. Thoughts kept spinning in my head, unshakable. Would I be strong enough to leave him? Could I continue my life without him by my side? All these years I had been attached to him, shared so many memories. The love I had for him was still there, but perhaps I had loved him so much that I forgot about myself. The next morning I woke up feeling heavily fatigued. I looked in the mirror, my eyes dark from lack of sleep, but in them was a feeling I had never recognized before. Resilience. I knew that if I continued living in this relationship, I would only be a part of a story that had long ended. I couldn't keep waiting for a miracle to fix everything. Finally, I realized I couldn't save a relationship where neither of us wanted anything from it anymore. Holding my phone, I called my lawyer. When I told him I wanted to proceed with the divorce, my voice didn't shake like I thought it would. It was calm and steady, as if I had known this decision for a long time. He asked if I was sure, if I wanted to try again. I simply answered, I can't keep living in this betrayal. I couldn't tell him about the sleepless nights, the times I had struggled with pain I couldn't touch, the emptiness I felt when I saw him standing next to another woman while I was a shadow in his life. A few days later, when I saw the divorce agreement on the table, I felt a strange sensation fill me. I signed the papers without hesitation. For the first time in all this time, I didn't feel like I was doing something wrong. I wasn't signing because I didn't love him anymore, but because I loved myself more. Alex didn't know about my decision until I called him to meet. I arranged to meet him at a cafe near my home, the place where we used to have warm dates, but this time there was no romantic atmosphere, just a confrontation with reality. He arrived late, his eyes weary, as though he was carrying some burden on his shoulders. When he sat down across from me, I saw in his eyes the worry, as if he had guessed what was about to happen. I didn't let him wait long. I've signed the divorce agreement, I said, my voice calm but unable to hide the determination in it. He was silent for a long time, his eyes searching for an explanation, a change in my decision. But I had already decided. Lily, I know I was wrong. I hurt you, and I want to fix everything. His words sounded familiar, but this time, they no longer meant anything. "Alex, do you love me?" I asked, my voice firm but not lacking in weariness. "If you really loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me. You wouldn't have done what you did with Samantha. Love isn't about empty promises. It isn't about sweet words when everything has fallen apart." He was silent, his head bowed like a child who had done something wrong. But I no longer felt pain. I only felt exhaustion. Exhausted from pouring so much energy into someone who no longer deserved it. "You didn't keep your promises, and now, I have nothing left to hold on to. You can regret it, but your betrayal has made me realize one thing: I must love myself more." A long silence passed between us, but it wasn't a silence of misunderstanding anymore, but of acceptance. I didn't need him to come back. I needed the freedom I had lost for so long in this marriage. "We're done, Alex. And I don't want to go back. Thank you for what you brought to me. But I've learned how to live for myself." After the divorce, the first few days were hard, but I gradually realized that I needed to take control of my own life. Instead of drowning in sadness and regret, I decided to focus on my work and the things that mattered most to me. This was the first time I truly lived for myself, not for anyone else. I found comfort in my work. Doing what I was passionate about, I felt stronger than ever. The feeling of completing a project, receiving praise from colleagues, and seeing clear results from my efforts made me feel reborn. I no longer felt like someone who depended on another to feel valuable. Work gave me confidence and joy, something I never thought I would find again after years of living in the silence of betrayal. I started engaging in social activities, meeting new people who shared my values and goals. I no longer lived within the confines of a broken relationship. I attended workshops, personal development courses, where I could share my story and help others who were going through similar struggles. Each workshop, each story I heard and shared, felt like a big lesson, an important step to not only finding strength within myself, but also realizing that I wasn't alone on this journey. One day, when I was attending a gathering with some new friends, I met Ethan. He was unlike anyone I had ever met. Ethan wasn't a pleasant and funny man, but also someone who understood and respected me in a way I had never felt before. Our relationship wasn't rushed, there was no noise or hurry. He didn't try to replace my past, he quietly walked alongside me on the road I was rebuilding. We started talking. Initially just light conversations, but gradually I felt myself reconnecting. I realized that I could love again, not because I needed a man to fill the gap in my heart, but because I could love someone real, someone who understood me, respected me, and didn't make me feel like I was a temporary choice. Every evening after a long day at work, Ethan and I would often take walks around the park. Our conversations were very natural, with no pressure from either side. He asked me about work, about what I was passionate about, and about the days I had gone through. I told him about those dark years, about the marriage that ended, but I didn't feel like I was digging up the past. Instead, I felt relieved to be able to share and receive understanding, without any judgment. There were times when I looked into Ethan's eyes and I saw sincerity and patience in his gaze. He didn't rush me. He didn't expect anything from me other than the truth. It was he who helped me realize that not everyone was part of that painful past. Not everyone would make me feel like I wasn't worthy. I began to believe that I could find true love, a love that didn't have to be tied to pain and betrayal. I wasn't in a hurry, not because I didn't want to love, but because I had learned that love should come from harmony, from understanding and respecting each other. I didn't need to accept a love just to fill the void in my heart. I needed a love where I could be myself, not a different version of myself to please someone else. While I found peace in this new love, I didn't forget to take care of myself. I joined yoga classes, learned how to cook, and participated in support groups for women who had gone through similar struggles. The feeling of connection, being supported, and sharing experiences made me realize that I wasn't alone. New friends, new companions in my life helped me rebuild myself, not just in terms of work but also mentally. I was no longer the woman from the past. Every day that passed, I felt stronger, more confident, and loved myself more. I didn't need to live in the shadow of memories gone by. I didn't need to let the past dim the future. I began living for myself because I deserved a complete life. Not the life someone else wanted me to live, but the life I chose. And when Ethan entered my life, he didn't just bring me new joy but also helped me realize that happiness wasn't something far away. Happiness could be in the small moments, in the gentle steps with a companion, and knowing that in the end, I had found the path for myself. I stood in front of the window of my new apartment, the light from New York pouring into the room, creating a space that was warm yet full of strength. The city outside, though constantly moving, made me feel a strange sense of peace. Throughout the years, I never thought I would find this kind of tranquility. A year ago, when my life felt like a storm, when everything seemed to be collapsing, I never imagined that one day I would be standing here, looking out at the world with clear eyes, and a heart no longer broken. Next to me was Ethan, the man I had learned to love, not because I needed a man, but because I needed a companion, someone who was willing to walk with me on this journey. His hand gripped mine, not out of force, but as a gentle and sincere promise. He remained there, silent, but I could feel his strength, as if he were the only anchor I needed after everything I had endured. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, his voice soft and gentle. I turned to look at him, the city lights reflected in my eyes, and I smiled. "I'm thinking about everything that's happened and what's to come." I sighed softly, feeling like a gentle breeze had swept through my soul. I never sought forgiveness from anyone else. I don't need him to apologize to me anymore. Because I've found forgiveness within myself, and that's the most important thing. Ethan didn't say anything more, held my hand tighter, as if he wanted me to know that he would always be there for me, no matter what happened. He understood me without me having to explain much. That feeling made me feel at ease, as if all the pain from the past was slowly fading away. I looked out the window where the lights from the buildings shone and reflected on the water, creating a beautiful scene. This city where I had started over now seemed to be welcoming me. I never thought I could find myself again after being crushed in a painful relationship. But now, standing here, I realized that those years of suffering had made me stronger, made me understand that I didn't need to wait for anyone else to live my life. I had found strength within myself, and that was what I needed the most. Alex's calls, the sweet messages between him and Samantha, had all become the past. Whenever I thought about what he had done, I no longer felt anger. I had let go and accepted that sometimes forgiveness isn't for someone else, it's for yourself. Because only when I forgive myself can I truly live for myself and move on. "You don't regret your decision, do you?" Ethan asked, his eyes always searching for the truth in mine. I shook my head, a sense of relief spreading through my body. "No, I don't regret it. The love I had for Alex, it was a part of me, but not everything. I've learned that only I can decide my happiness. I gave him too many chances, but in the end, I had to save myself." Ethan smiled, and I knew he understood. He didn't try to replace Alex in my life, but he created a space for me to feel free. He didn't force me to forget the past, he quietly stood by me, helping me walk on the new road. I knew that this love wasn't like the love I had for Alex. It didn't have the intense passion, but it was a love of understanding, patience, and mutual respect. In truth, I didn't need romantic love or sweet words. I needed a man who could see me as a strong woman capable of standing on her own. Ethan did that. He didn't need to save me, he helped me realize that I had saved myself. We didn't need many words, just being together was enough. I hadn't sought forgiveness from Alex, I had found it within myself, and that was the greatest liberation I could carry for the rest of my life. "Where do we go now?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle like an invitation to move forward. I turned back to look at him, smiling warmly, and I knew that we would walk this road together. A new road, where there were no shadows of betrayal, no pains of the past. Only me, him, and the new opportunities waiting ahead. "I don't know," I said, but my voice was full of confidence. "But I'm sure of one thing, we'll create a new future together, and this time, I won't be held back by the past." The light from the city outside illuminated the room, and I felt a strange sense of completeness. No more pain, no more meaningless questions. Only me and the new life I had chosen. As I lingered here, gazing at the city and feeling every step I took, I couldn't help but think about the long journey I had been through. a journey full of pain, but also full of valuable lessons. I learned that sometimes we have to leave the past behind to build a new future, even if it means facing the truth and letting go of what no longer belongs to us. Love isn't always enough to keep everything together, and sometimes forgiving yourself is the most important thing. Or about you? Have you ever had to face tough decisions in your life? How did you find strength in the challenging times? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I'd love to hear your story. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more touching, authentic stories about life, love, and family, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.